when people see people who look like them in the industry, whether they are a tenant or whether they are a young person trying to get in the industry, when they see persons that look like them, they know that there's more possible for them. They know that they can be in the industry. They know that they can look at opportunities for a better life, a better situation.
Welcome to BuzzHouse, a Baker Tilly podcast where you can find all the buzz around multifamily housing. I'm Don Bernards, the partner in charge of Baker Tilly's multifamily housing practice.
And I'm Garrick Gibson, a partner at Baker Tilly, also specializing in consulting on multifamily housing transactions across the country.
Each week, we'll bring you a guest or a topic in the multifamily housing industry that will help you win now and anticipate tomorrow. Let's get started.
Guest today on the BuzzHouse is Toni Jackson, an asset to the affordable housing industry. Toni is a principal with the Banks law firm, which provides legal services in affordable housing and community economic development. Toni currently represents for-profit and nonprofit developers and public housing agencies in commercial real estate development and affordable housing finance. But before we get into our discussion with Toni, I wanted to touch base on some recent affordable housing news. The U.S. Department of Treasury announced new guidance to increase the use of American Rescue Plan funds to boost the supply of affordable housing. The guidance permits state and local fiscal recovery funds to fund the full principal amount of long-term affordable housing loans and expands the list of federal programs for which those funds can be used for affordable housing. In fact, they've actually had a pretty good response. So through March 31st, Treasury data actually shows more than 600 state and local governments budgeted $12.9 billion in state and local fiscal recovery funds to meet housing needs and lower housing-related costs. In addition to that news, the National Low-Income Housing Coalition released its annual report, Out of Reach 2002, The High Cost of Housing. The report highlights the mismatch between the wages people earn and the price of decent rental housing in every state, metropolitan area, and the county in the U.S. The report also calculates the housing wage a full-time worker must earn to afford a rental home without spending more than 30% of their income on housing costs. In fact, this year's national housing wage is $25.82 per hour for a modest two-bedroom home at fair market rent and $21.25 per hour for a modest one-bedroom home. This illustrates the challenges people are facing with the record-breaking rent increases. So I definitely suggest reading through that annual report. So now, without further ado, let's jump into our discussion with Toni. So thanks for joining BuzzHouse, Toni. And so for the benefit of our listeners, we definitely like to start off with you giving maybe some information about your background and how you got into housing and maybe a little bit about your current firm and the types of projects you're working on.
Certainly. First and foremost, thank you, Garrett and BuzzHouse, for having me here today. I'm always excited to be able to share a little bit of what I know and have a chance to talk about affordable housing, which, is what I do professionally, but is a personal passion of mine as well. You asked a little bit about my background, and I have always wanted to be an attorney since I was probably 12 years old. I saw civil rights attorneys at work and saw differences being made in the lives of people. Little did I know when I, as a small kid wanted to be an attorney, that I would be doing what I'm doing now. I always thought I would be a litigator, and that was, where I thought my heart was taking me. But after, trying to figure out and follow my path, I found myself doing real estate. And early on in my career, barely a year of practicing, actually, I had a nonprofit come to me about an opportunity they had to purchase an existing apartment complex and did not know how they would finance it. And I told them, well, I've heard about these things called tax credits. And I did my first tax credit deal, started it and finished it in 92. So I've been, doing this for quite some time. Never thought that I would make a living doing this, but one of the things that, I have come to understand, and I actually put in my bio, is that I have been able to find a way to combine practice and law with giving back to the community, which has always been important to me. With affordable housing, I see differences made in people's lives. I see tangibly, what we do and the end results and how it makes a difference for people and communities. And so that has been what has gotten me to this place. I'm with, as you said, the Banks Law Firm. I joined the Banks Law Firm 3 years ago. I joined a good friend and colleague of mine in a firm that he had started about a little over 25 years ago. We are based in Durham, North Carolina, and we have offices in Houston, Atlanta, Charlotte, and Columbia, South Carolina. And so we are a minority owned firm. It's about 14 of us practicing, and we specialize in affordable housing, finance, and community development law. We represent some HBCUs, and we have an employment practice as well. So I've enjoyed this new direction in my practice. I was previously with two other large law firms that I enjoyed helping to, grow those practices. And now, I'm with the Banks Law Firm helping out over here, where I can. So the things we're working on has just been tremendous. We're working on a lot of LITEX projects, working on a lot of disaster recovery projects. We represent a lot of housing authorities as they redevelop their housing stock and partner with, new partners. So we have a lot going on. I've been around to watch, when things fell out years ago in real estate and now it's coming back, when there was nothing going on in the bond world, and now we're oversubscribed here in Texas and even, in other states that we're working in. So it's an exciting time to be in affordable housing, but it's a time that's reminding all of us of the incredible need for not just housing units, but the need for us to find ways of more resources so that we can put more units out there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, thank you for the intro. I always love hearing the different ways that our guests have sort of gravitated into this area that
Mhm.
I call affordable housing real estate. It's always interesting. And
Yeah.
you and I just bumped into each other, obviously, at the Texas Housing Conference. And so as you're going through the sessions and walking around and chatting with everybody there, what were some of your key takeaways? Did you get a sense of that we're heading in the right direction overall?
I think all of us doing this are in the right direction because, as I said earlier, the need is so great. And, the excitement about the conference has definitely grown. And you could, see that very, real excitement, not just, because our numbers have grown and because we're all so excited to be back in person, but because I think most of us in this industry are very excited about affordable housing and giving back and making a difference and recognize, the incredible need that's out there. TAP, I have to say, has done a great job. We have a great conference planner in Christy Sutterfield. And I have been with TAP since the very beginning. So to see our numbers where they are, over 1,500 registrants this year, was incredible. But also hearing people trying to put their heads together to come up with solutions, to come up with a game plan, with also all vocalizing their frustrations about some of the things that we're trying to deal with as we tackle this incredible need. Those are the things that we were hearing. Is we, like I said, we're at an incredible time for affordable housing. I heard a statistic recently over COVID that has just still boggled my mind, and it was saying that during the COVID, every 30 hours there was one new billionaire created. However, of that same statistic, Garrett, every 33 hours, 1 million people went into poverty. So you in 30 hours you create one billionaire, but for every billionaire created, we're sending 1 million people into poverty. So what we're seeing is an incredible income gap that's going out there. And what that's also saying, if these people are being thrown into poverty, we are just not even coming close to keeping up with the need for affordable housing. That gap is increasing. That's why we have what we know now as the working homeless, people who are leaving their cars each morning and actually going to school and going to work. They have a job, but that job, because of not having a livable wage, is not allowing them to have a roof over their head. We forget so often that affordable housing simply means that you are not rent burden or mortgage burden with your income, that only 30% of your income should be going towards your housing needs. However, in this country, we are having people who are having to choose between medicine and childcare and transportation and all of these things that make up our daily lives, and they're spending 50 to 60% of their incomes on housing. That's all we're talking about when we talk about affordability, is people having the opportunity to have a good, safe, and decent place to live without having to use all of their income in order to have it. And so as we come together at the Texas Housing Conference and so many other conferences that we all see each other at, we recognize that we have to come up with ways to be able to put more units out there, whether those units are rental or they are for sale. But more and more, the need for rental housing continues to increase because when people are unstable in their income, there's a greater need for rental. When the economy is uncertain as to what's going on next, people are less likely and unwilling to want to purchase. They want to rent, but we just don't have the units out there. And as a result, we have landlords and others who take advantage of people because they are not giving them good, safe, and sanitary places to live. And too often when we go into communities to talk about what we're building, people get it very confused and they think, they see us and think we're those bad guys who aren't taking care of our product, not recognizing and realizing that what we are putting out there is market quality. It is comparable to any market rate unit, but we aren't able to put out the number of units that we'd like to in the amount of time that we need to.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, that's a great insight. I mean, it's an interesting statistic, and I'm glad that you touched on all those points because it's obvious that everybody's having challenges there.
Yeah.
And obviously, you're in the legal space, right? So
Yeah.
I know you work with a wide variety of clients in the affordable housing space. And just following up on what you were saying, well, like, what are some key challenges from an actual legal perspective that you are seeing in today's environment?
Well, the challenges aren't just from the legal perspective. I mean, because of what we do for our clients, we kind of go through all of the challenges with them or watch them as they're trying to, address some of those challenges. But clearly, first and foremost, cost is the biggest challenge. And our clients being able to figure out how to make the deals work. Legally, we are often working with our clients as they are securing the land, and because of the way these deals are financed, we're having the challenge of putting together earnest money contracts in a way that our clients are able to hold the land longer, and sellers aren't always amenable to that. And so we're, having to get more creative and more detailed in our earnest money contracts that we're drafting, because land is an issue, but land cost is an issue. And so anything that, is driving that cost, including a seller adding to those costs every time an extension is needed, it starts changing the bottom line of the finances for that transaction. The overall lack of resources. And so as we have new resources come online, like the disaster funding, those have been, resources that we did not have years ago. We have to work through how to make those resources work within these deals, because certain, requirements when there's going to be tax credits, then how other federal funding and state funding may work. We have to work with our clients to be able to help them structure the deals in a way that doesn't cause and create other legal issues, tax issues, those kinds of things. So we're constantly working, with our clients as they look at trying to add to that capital stack and bring on new sources, because just because they said, hey, I've identified these sources, we are, as their legal team, has to be sure that we are structuring that those sources in a way that actually works. And then I am very on the ground with my clients, and the NIMBYism is something I attend community meetings with my clients when they, need that. I attend public meetings like with a planning commission or a city council, and educating the community, educating our elected officials, helping them understand what it is we're doing. People hear affordable housing and they just don't get it. We have to do a better job of educating people and putting a face to what it is that we are in fact building, who it is that we are actually in fact serving. So the NIMBYism, has gotten worse, no question. I tell people all the time, communities have gotten more sophisticated with their NIMBYism. They are creating websites that are password protected and passing along false information. And so we have to be very clear on the words we use. I recently wrote an article that was called The Race Conversation About Housing. And I talked about the need for us to be clear on the words that we use when we're talking about affordable housing, because oftentimes people would throw out something about public housing, but we forget that public housing was actually created to be a stepping stone into a person being able to grow into middle class. It was created really for white constituents, and then we later had people of color going into public housing. We talk about we don't want to see multifamily, but yet we see high rises that are built, and those are multifamily, but we it's a high rise when it is market rate, but it's multifamily when it is affordable. So we got to work on the words that we use so that we can get people more comfortable with what we are building. Now we are going through the affordable housing versus workforce housing, but we can't lose sight that there is still that need for deeper targeting, that we can't lose sight of, again, as you were indicating, that the living wage, the housing wage that people need is not there. They're not making it. So there's going to continue to be that need for deeper targeting housing for true affordable, but we have a workforce that's out there, city workers, teachers, first responders, who also we have to put that face on who it is that are our tenants, so that people understand that these are people not unlike you. But too often people push back because it feels unknown, it feels like someone that they don't know. And we got to get rid of all the false narratives that affordable housing creates more crime, and that it creates an issue and raises taxes, and it brings in all of these new kids into the school districts. We have to refute that information, because we know more often than not the crime comes from outside of our properties, and we know that the students are generally already being served by that school district. It's not like busloads of students are coming into a new school district. So we have to work to go against these notions and these stereotypes, because all of those create the challenges in trying to build more affordable housing.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it definitely is interesting that words and what they mean are very important
Mhm.
to the individuals who are actually reading it, depending on where their mindset is.
Yeah.
So, that being said, with the NIMBYs and things that are out there, is there any like new legislation or any sort of case law that you know of that may or may affect some of those issues?
Well, we don't, you actually started out talking about some of the new things that are, going on out there. But overall, I think, one of the big things in our industry is that we're all watching to see if there is going to be some changes to the 50% test, because that is very important as it relates to the bonds and the money that is being able to be used towards the units on the front end. And so, we're watching that very closely. The thing with new legislation and any legislation in this arena at all is, again, oftentimes the people that we need to pass legislation that can help us or impact us, we're having to try to get a very complicated process understood by laypersons. And so as a result, by the time we kind of get that growing tide, it seems to be that legislative session is over, or the momentum is lost because something else ends up becoming a priority in the legislature. But it's important for us as a industry to watch not just the new legislation, but also watching the budgets that are being put out there by Congress, any new fundings that are being created, and to really try to push for those things that we can, push for. Also, like even the per capita rate for the bonds, if we could get that increased. But we got to work within the confines of what we have. There's, always something going on also locally for a lot of different states. I mean, here in Texas, we recently had some legislation that is causing banks and investors to question or look at whether or not they can invest in our deals because some language that was put into a Senate bill during the last legislature. So we're constantly watching and seeing what is impacting our industry, because sometimes when we think something is not directly impacting housing, it has ways of kind of creeping in and impacting us. So we're always watching that closely.
Yeah, thanks. And we got one question, the last question here before we wrap it up. And I know I was just at the Texas conference with you, and I saw a lot of changes and a lot of panels that were addressing the issues of diversity. Even Baker Tilly, we have a lot of different programs internally that are addressing diversity within even our organization. So, how does this diversity play, in your view, a role in affordable housing?
It plays a very big role in affordable housing because, like other industries, we recognize that we can't not have the conversation. Things have changed. When I came into the industry, I was oftentimes one of very few persons of color and a small handful of women. I was very excited at this conference to see the growing number of women. But there's definitely still concerns of growing industry professionals who are people of color. We are working in ways to try to teach and educate people of the opportunities out there. So many of us, you started off saying you enjoy hearing people kind of talk about their entry into affordable housing. And so many of us just kind of tripped into it because I tell people all the time, when I started, this wasn't even a practice area. But there's opportunities for lawyers, for people with finance backgrounds, for growing developers. There, these opportunities out there, but we have to do more to encourage people of color and women to participate in our industry. And that's really important also because too often the people that we are serving are women, single mothers, or people of color. And we have to be mindful of that as well. But it's like all things, when people see people who look like them in the industry, whether they are a tenant or whether they are a young person trying to get in the industry, when they see persons that look like them, they know that there's more possible for them. They know that they can be in the industry. They know that they can look at opportunities for a better life, a better situation. And so that is why, you're seeing more, not just with TAP, but other organizations addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. And, TAP, we're just no different. But I find myself sometimes being not just very vocal, but very passionate about the issue. And one of the things that when we were having the women's panel, I talked a little bit about the fact that I am, a civil rights baby. I remember segregation. I remember times that I was told no simply because of the color of my skin. And so I look years later and at this age, there's still too many times when I walk in the room and I'm the only one or I am the first. So it's still important. It's very important. It's important, like I said, for our tenants to see our industry being more diverse. And it's important for people who are interested in our industry to know that the opportunities exist for people of color and for women. And so I'm excited that TAP has taken it upon themselves to create a diversity mission statement and are doing new endeavors like we created a student recruitment where we are bringing in students of color and to come in and see firsthand what the industry is doing in an effort to try to create a pipeline. And we have other things that we're trying to work through. I think one of the panels that was really great during the conference was when there was a conversation with developers and talking about pipelines and how what kind of opportunities exist and what kind of things that they can do. I was very excited to be on the panel with your colleague and real excited to hear the things that Baker Tilly is doing for women at your company. So the conversation is necessary, not just for affordable housing, but just across the board, because again, we are, in my mind, just way past the time where persons like myself are the only or the first walking into the room.
I like that. We are way past the time. And with that, we definitely are, but we are definitely out of time for this, but always amazing insight. And we, obviously want to thank you, Toni, for joining the Buzz House. And listeners, definitely thank you for tuning in today. And hopefully, you take away a lot of information from this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you again for asking me to join you today.
Thank you for listening to BuzzHouse. To receive a notification when new episodes are available, please subscribe to BuzzHouse, a Baker Tilly podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. For additional resources around multifamily housing, check out bakertilly.com. And if you have a suggested topic, please send them to build@bakertilly.com. That's BUILD @bakertilly.com.